All right, welcome everybody to the lower stage. My name is Sam, for those of you who don't know me. We are super excited for this next session. We're going to be talking about scaling your agency business with an awesome panel of people. Please welcome to the stage Andrew Haller, the co-CEO and founder of AirDev, along with Peter Kang, the CEO and founder of Barrel Holdings, and Bubble's own Director of Partnerships, Alexis Barker.
Watered down.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, both in person and virtually. I'm Alexis. I lead partnerships here at Bubble, and I'm thrilled to be sharing the stage with Andrew and Peter today. We're going to talk about their journeys building and scaling agency businesses. And we put together this panel because this is a very common question we get as a partnerships team. What are ways in which we can grow beyond, our developer shop and really think about building a, scalable and sustainable business? So today I'll be asking Andrew and Peter to share some learnings from their combined 20+ years experience building no-code development agencies. So I'll kick things off with some intros before we hop into questions that I'm going to be asking Peter and Andrew. We'll also be doing some live Q&A at the end. So similar to the AMA panel, if you want to join the app and ask questions in the chat, we'll be pulling some at the end, and we'll get through as many as we have time for. So Andrew has been bubbling since 2013 and co-founded AirDev in 2015 as the very first Bubble agency. Since then, AirDev has served over 1,000 startup and enterprise clients through their agency and freelancer models. They also create tools for bubblers, including their Canvas framework, their professional Bubble Bootcamp, and their wiki. Peter Kang is co-founder and chairman of Barrel Holdings, a portfolio of digital agency businesses that includes Barrel, a leading Shopify agency, and BX Studio, a leading Webflow agency. And he's been in the agency business since 2006. And the reason why we brought together Peter and Andrew is to really share perspective and learnings both inside the Bubble ecosystem and outside of it as well, because we think there's going to be a lot of commonalities and also potentially differences in what they've learned over the years in working within these ecosystems. So we're going to talk about scaling in a bit, but I would love to start things off by hearing about the origin story of each of your agency businesses and how you got started in no-code app development. So Andrew, let's start with you.
Sure, yeah. I think my Bubble origin story is kind of similar to many people who I've met here, which is to say it was a total accident. And that I did not have a plan to start an agency. That was not the master plan. And so back in 2013, I was in grad school, and I was a founder of a tech-enabled company trying to create my V1 platform. And I had this dilemma of I did not know how to code. I did not have a best friend technical co-founder I could turn to. I did not have lots of money to throw at a fancy design shop to get it done. And so I had not very many options. And sort of in that moment of desperation, I came across Bubble. It was actually a bit funny. So Emmanuel had gone to business school where I was a few years earlier. He put a little blurb at the very bottom of some newsletter that I glanced at. And it said, hey, you can, as a business school person, you can learn to build your own application and get it off the ground without a technical co-founder. And I think had I been in the tech space before, I would have been very skeptical of that promise. I was not. I was quite gullible. I said, this sounds great. I'll jump right in. Went to the session. Emmanuel and Josh came to campus. And I was the only person who went to go see these guys and learn about Bubble. And so I just sat in a booth with them, and they gave me a product demo. They'd been working on it for about 9 months or so. They had the first version. And it just kind of clicked. As somebody who had done Excel before, had done PowerPoint, I was a consultant in my previous life, it kind of made sense to me that this would be the way that you think about applications. And so spent the next few months building my own platform. And I ran into another thing that I think others who I've talked to have run into, which is I completely forgot about running my business and just was so enamored with building every possible feature I could think of for my application. And so just kind of realized that Bubble was this magical thing and that I had accidentally become a full stack engineer. And my friends who had been coding for years were like, how did you do that so quickly? And so I thought there might be something to this. And so Fast forward a little bit, went and got a normal job after grad school, but just kept bubbling kind of nights and weekends on the side. And my now co-founder, Vlad, who was at school with me, we were kind of both doing this thing. And at a certain point, Vlad, he quit his job and then he built a Twitter clone called Not Real Twitter. And it was really just it was a fun side project. He had some idle time and it was to just showcase what Bubble could do. And kind of posted it, got a bunch of traction from that, and that kind of gave us some of the early well, maybe we should keep digging into this. And so that was kind of the start of what became AirDev.
Awesome. Peter?
Yeah, so no code didn't come till much later for me. So I'll kind of back up and tell the story of how I got into this agency business. So back in college, so I went to school in New York City, met my co-founder, and it was interesting because I was really into the design side of things, and I was making websites already, and he was one of the rare folks that I met who knew how to code HTML, CSS, and everything. So I was like, hey, let's team up, let's do some projects together, make some beer money on the side. And so the two of us worked odd jobs, did a lot of sites for nonprofits, artists, student clubs that had some budget. So got some reps in. And then, we did, after doing enough of these projects, we kind of promised each other, hey, let's find a way to work together, after we graduate. Well, I'm a couple years older, so I actually graduated first. And then, a lot of my classmates got a job in investment banking at the time. Worked in banking. And, with finance, it's, the hours were pretty horrendous. We're talking 70, 80, 90 hours a week. But I was still really into building websites. And so every Friday, I'd go back to my apartment in Midtown, and my friend who was at this time a senior in college, he'd take the train down, and then we'd work from Friday 9 p.m. till 6 a.m. in the morning, just doing side projects. We kept at it, and honestly, it was just fun, first of all. And after staring at spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations all week, it was nice to kind of exercise that creative freedom. And so, so I timed it. I tried to time it as perfectly as I could. I knew I would get my bonus at this exact date, and I did and I was like, hey, once I get my bonus for the year, I'm out. So I planned it all the way through, and even set it up without my superiors knowing that if when I went to quit, I wouldn't have to do the 2 weeks kind of notice thing. I could just walk out that day. So I distinctly remember Friday, okay, money hit the bank account. I was like, all right, money's in. And then Monday I walked in. I was like, hey, I quit. By the way, I already transitioned all my stuff to other people. So today's my last day. And they were like, oh, really? So that was 2006, and that was basically the first day of Barrel. And Barrel was the first agency that my co-founder and we started to build. Still very web design development focused. We used to do a lot of front end work, and then slowly worked our way into things like Expression Engine, what do you call it? WordPress for sure. We just dabbled in some Drupal. So kind of worked through these content management systems, and then also did some web app builds as well, very custom stuff. But then we stumbled up. We got some requests to some e-commerce projects. So then we got. We were looking for a solution. There was a clunky one called Magento, and it was it really was a big pain to do stuff on it. So we're like, there's got to be a better one. And at the time, there was a very new startup called Shopify that had e-commerce capabilities. So we're like, oh, let's try this out. And we were one of the earlier agencies to the Shopify space, and started building sites on it. And lo and behold, especially in the 2010s, as the D2C kind of trend started to take off, we were in the right place, got to work with some really great brands that got a lot of VC funding, and so it was a kind of the heyday, rode that wave, and kind of Barrel grew into a Shopify agency. So it's still very much Shopify focused, and that's the agency that was the primary one. So along the way, what happened was just being in the business for so long, we had all these other clients that were not on Shopify. So WordPress was a good example, and we were like, hey, it's kind of dilutive to have WordPress clients with the Shopify focus. And what we decided to do was, and we also had some Shopify clients that were just way too small for where we were going. So we spun that out as a separate business. And one of my employees at the time, volunteered, hey, I could go run this. And so we set him up, separate entity, and was like, hey, you go run. No shared resources. You kind of hire your own people and get this started. And that business started doing really well when it's on its own. And we own a big chunk of it as well. So we're like, cool. This is very interesting. This model of if you're getting some deals or you have some kind of contracts already, you could kind of spin that out while still allowing your agency to focus on what it does best. And at the time, and this is where the no-code piece comes in. At the time, a couple of our designers got really into Webflow, and they built a bunch of client stuff on Webflow. But as with many things, designers got into it, but then after a while, they're like, oh, we just want to do everything in Figma. And so we were getting these Webflow requests just because Webflow saw that, oh, agencies using our stuff, and they put us on their partner directory, and we're getting a lot of leads. But I was like, this is distracting from our Shopify focus. So we decided to just start another company that was 100% dedicated to Webflow, and we hired someone to run it as a co-founder and CEO, and that's where BX Studio, our Webflow agency, was born. And so we've been scaling that, and it's Jacob, who runs that business, has done a great job, and we see them with leads still, but it stands on its own, and it's under our holding company umbrella. And yeah, this year it's up for Webflow Agency of the Year, which is great, and so pretty exciting. And now with 3 agencies, we were like, hey, maybe we could take this concept even further, and maybe I don't need to be, doing the day-to-day agency stuff anymore. I could step away. So earlier this year, one of our longtime employees and partner in the business took over as CEO. I was able to step out with my co-founder, and we've been focusing on the Barrel holding company level. So it's confusingly called Barrel Holdings, but we're focused mainly on incubating as well as acquiring agencies, and so that's where we're at today.
As a quick point of comparison, starting an agency, one of the big questions is, when do you leave your day job? Do what Peter did. He planned it perfectly. When I left my job, I left 2 months before I was supposed to get my bonus. And not only that, I was scheduled to take a company retreat to Cabo, and they uninvited me from that trip when I told them I was leaving. So don't go the Andrew route. Plan ahead.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. I'd love to go back to the early days as you were starting to grow your business. Maybe it was just you and your co-founder at the time. How did you go about building a name for yourself, and how did you source leads for your agency? And looking back over the past several years, how has that evolved? Looking at present day, how you think about this? Peter, let's start with you.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, I have a few different examples now. So because we've had a few different starts to the business. So with Barrel, it was very much we'll do any job at any price, even for free, and just do it until we could build a portfolio and a track record. And that's the thing is it took us, I published something on LinkedIn a while back where it's it took us 5 years to just break 1 million, which for us felt very compared to some of my peers, I'm like, wow, it took forever. But the first few years, it was I remember the first year was we broke 35K or something. It was really small beans, but we were just kind of compounding because just doing whatever we could to build our network. And also we didn't have the benefit of coming from a professional setting where we had a lot of connections. It was very much, I was 23, my co-founder was 21 at the time. So it was okay, what can we do to just get in? We did a lot of sites for nonprofits because we knew professionals worked there, and if you get to be friends with people on the board, they kind of have some other businesses. So we kind of try to work that angle as much as possible. Yeah, did a lot of pro bono websites at the time. I'd say in the case of obviously similar to, I'm sure on the Bubble side, with Webflow, we went really hard into the partnership side of things because we position ourselves as a Webflow agency, and we're hey, exclusively Webflow. And so that got the attention of their partnerships team. And then we started developing relationships with their AEs. And so the deal flow comes through those channels these days. And so that's been really helpful. Just one more thing, so we do have a branding agency called Bolster. So, I thought it'd be easy to kind of seed branding projects that were coming through the other agencies to this agency. Didn't work out that way. We got 2 projects early on, so I was oh, this is gonna be easy. We're gonna be able to scale this. and then like nothing. So it was so hard to kind of get this going. So we had to like really think about how do we build deal flow. So we created this thing we call it the omakase, based on kind of the trust the sushi chef to give you whatever. And so we just offered a free brand sprint to whoever would want it. And we went to like a lot of these startup accelerators and went, hey, like work with us, we'll get you on a wait list, get you free branding, take it or leave it, you don't pay anything. But if you like it, then you can buy any of these other services. A lot of them needed investor decks, and a lot of them needed marketing websites, et cetera. So we just went hard on that. We're almost at 100 of those we've done over a period of a year. And wow, like it's just, I remember like 6 months into it, my co-founder, who's the guy designing all these, he's like, are you sure you want to continue with this? It's like, we're getting nothing. And I was like, let's just get to 100. Good things will happen. And sure enough, along the way, you meet all kinds of people, right? 100 companies, you might meet, and anywhere between like 100 to 200 people, right? So like we ended up meeting a lot of people, and some of them became super connectors because they liked the free work, and maybe they themselves couldn't afford to pay us, but then they ended up connecting us with like 4, 5, 6 other paying clients, and so that just created the network effects. But it was such a long and like painful kind of strategy to execute, but I'm glad we did it because we learned a lot from it, and we're like, okay, cool, like the patience paid off.
Yeah, awesome. Sure.
Yeah, I think for us, getting those couple anchor clients at the beginning was really important. Coming back to that question of can I leave my job and still, we were living in San Francisco, it's fairly expensive there, like can we pay rent? And we were pretty lucky in the early days. We had 2 anchor clients. One of them was Teach for America, and they didn't have a lot of money for us, but they gave us an office space. And then we had another one called Dividend Finance. And Dividend was kind of an interesting case because they had tried to build using code this sort of complex CRM platform for solar installers. And they had worked with a traditional tech stack agency. And it had been sort of a disaster for them, and they were very behind on delivering. They had like a month to go to deliver this platform. And so they were pretty desperate, as I had been desperate myself before. And their CTO knew Josh from a previous job and had been bubbling on the side. And he was like, I think Bubble's our only option here. Can we do this? And so they said, like, is there anyone who bubbles? And I was at the time waiting to start my new job after business school. They were like, yeah, there's this guy out there in San Francisco. He's bubbling a lot. Talk to him. And so in 1 month, I just sort of sat in my living room and rebuilt this whole platform myself and got them launched and got them working on Bubble. And over time, they worked a lot with Josh and Emmanuel to make, Josh and Emmanuel were making custom Salesforce integrations for them and all sorts of stuff. And then they were starting to scale a lot based on that platform. They came back to then me and Vlad and said, we need more help. And so it was a very small contract, perhaps by normal standards, but it was enough for us to say, okay, we can survive jumping ship into this world and get started. So that was really fortunate to kind of have that anchor point. In the early days, it was kind of, with Bubble, it was kind of easier and harder than today. So the nice thing was, there was no other Bubble agency. And so we were right on the homepage of Bubble. It was like, here's Bubble, you can build anything you want. Oh, do you need help? Here's AirDev. And so that was great. The problem was not many people were coming to that website. So we didn't get a whole lot of deal flow, but we were kind of, the go-to spot. Funny aside, so I think one of the challenges actually when you're just starting an agency, it's the 2 of you or 1 of you, is you'll get a project and you'll be super happy about that. And then you're like, okay, now I have to execute this project. And you're the one doing that, right? So you spend all your time building in Bubble and executing, and you're happy about it because you're like, I'm getting paid for this. This is a good project. And then that project comes to an end and you go, oh, I should have been finding that next project, right? And so we had a lot of that, up and down of having work and being busy and happy and then having that sad moment afterward. And so to combat that, I'm not recommending this per se, but Vlad built a little Bubble app connected to Twilio, and it would text us once a day. And it would say, did you close any business today? And then you would reply back yes or no. And we didn't have AI to make up creative responses, but Vlad had written a lot of really angry things that it would respond if you said no, and so it would insult you and say, you're a terrible failure. And so we thought maybe that kind of tough love would get us selling a little bit more. But no, it was very difficult in the early stages. I think as we think about past those early days, the thing that we've tried to do, we are not expert marketers or salespeople. Just personally, we like to build things, and so we've tried to just anchor on what we are actually good at, which is we have this bubble thing and it's unique and we can build things, and so we've tried to build different fun projects and demos and showcases and try to put content out there that is helpful to people who are trying to learn Bubble or who are curious about Bubble and what it can do. I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about people's perception of no code generally, but showcasing what it can do. So obviously, Vlad's Not Real Twitter was one of those. We've built a lot of similar sort of fun showcase applications, including a recent one that is a social network of only bots that talk to each other, and you can create your own bot and throw it in the pool and see how it works with others. But just trying to create some things like that we can point to with folks who we are talking to in the sales front, and also kind of attract some people around our name, and try to create our brand as people who are thoughtful and down to earth and kind of know their stuff in this space, and hope that the space itself kind of grows.
Awesome. Your answer is a great segue into my next question. I'd love to talk about your process and learnings from working with larger clients. So you alluded to this in your answer, Andrew, but I'd love to talk about how you pitch clients on no-code tools. How have you learned to handle objections and misconceptions about no-code versus code for these larger organizations? And the second part of this is I would love to hear, how did your business model change as you started to support these types of clients? What did you do up front, and then what did you kind of iterate on as time went on? Andrew, you want to start?
Sure, yeah. First of all, I will say most of our clients, even today, are still startups. That is what Bubble has grown up supporting. It is a founder-first, ethos, and that is great because as a product, if you are good enough to serve startups who are building real products, in most cases, you are good enough for enterprises. They are needing the same. They often need less sophistication of the product and have simpler products to build, and so. We still serve a lot of startups, but yes, we have been, fortunate to have those opportunities to work with some bigger orgs too. And I think generally the thing that we focus on in talking about no code and Bubble is we do actually distance Bubble a little bit from no code. It's great that in the early days, no code was not a term. It's great to have that, well-known term to kind of anchor on, and people are not as bewildered or nervous about it. But then we kind of say, well, Bubble is actually different. We call it a visual programming language. That is how we think about Bubble, because the concerns that people have about no-code tools are often like, will we hit a roadblock or a brick wall where we can't do something? And so we talked about how Bubble is actually very similar to code. It is modeled on how you build front ends and back ends and workflows and all of that stuff. And so it is a visual programming language. It's very low level. You can customize absolutely everything, and try to make them feel like it's not that dissimilar to what they're used to. And that helps to kind of disarm and give confidence that Bubble is a platform that can handle what they need to do. And it also makes it a little bit easier when we start to talk about how we're staffing teams and how we're pricing projects and things like that, because it can be similar in many ways. Just with this different sort of platform. So yeah, I think that's kind of how we try to position things for enterprises.
Yeah. For enterprise, especially with Barrel, so our Shopify agency, we've had to deal with this a bit. So for example, we'll work with especially like Stanley Black & Decker, right? Like Black & Decker, Craftsman, those tools, they're a client of ours. And it's, the work itself is pretty basic. We're going in and we're building a new Shopify e-com site for them, or kind of helping them improve it. But that's in terms of the lift, that's, what was even maybe harder was getting through procurement, right? There's a whole process where, even the sales process, let's start there. It's there's interest, but then you have to kind of go through 4 different layers of people, and have all these checkpoints of you present a bunch of times to different people. they'll, usually it's like a marketing person who brings us in, but then, at some point, some kind of technical leader is brought in to vet us. And then if we make it through all those folks, then we get kicked up to another level. And then they're like, oh, okay, our SVP of whatever wants to talk to your founder. And so then, we have to have another conversation. And then you have to fill out like some really onerous kind of compliance type of document. So just having that infrastructure is important, because if you don't, then it'll slow you down, right? And so just over the years, we've just kind of gotten very proficient at like, okay, like big company procurement time, let's go. Because I remember like it took us a year to get into Amazon, and like I was like, never again. We're gonna be much faster. And so just building up that muscle for enterprise has been important. And the other part after that is just account management, because like when you work with enterprise, it's likely in our cases like there's multiple work streams. So when you just have a project manager and you try to throw that person into a bunch of projects, it's just gonna be too much, and they're gonna be overwhelmed. So what we typically end up doing is like, okay, there's like an executive sponsor on our side as well, like, and that's usually one of the co-founders or someone like a head of client services, and then you have like an account lead, and then maybe they might have an account coordinator to support them, and then you have like PMs on each of the projects that are working on. So it's just the investment needed to kind of manage these kinds of projects, and then you have the subject matter experts that come in to support. So it just, enterprise just, at the end of the day is you almost kind of got to look at their org structure, and they got to feel comfortable that your org structure can kind of mirror to some degree, and then support it for that particular project. And so, because it's kind of weird, like sometimes we have these like workshops or offsites, and then they'll bring like 20 people into the room, and if you only bring like 1 or 2 people, it doesn't feel like they're getting their money's worth. So like we have to kind of staff up and have the head count as well to some degree. And so those are some of the things with enterprise that we've learned.
A quick note on the procurement process and just all the layers. Obviously, it's helpful to have a champion from within the organization kind of helping guide you through that process. But we also found, especially in the early days, working with other agencies, consultancies who are already in the door there, and either as a subcontractor on their project or having them make the introduction is really helpful, because you can just kind of ride on their coattails. They've already gone through this huge, arduous process, and you can kind of help enable them. So that's still very useful in those cases.
Yeah, awesome. Peter, your comment about org structure leads in nicely to another part of the agency journey, which is deciding when to make your first hires. So I'd love to hear, at what point did you decide you were ready to grow beyond you and your co-founders, and what were those first few hires that you made, and why? Andrew, let's start with you.
Sure. Vlad and I worked together for about a year before we got to the point where we could hire somebody else. We were bootstrapped, so we needed to be confident enough that we had some deal flow and that we had enough savings from what we had made to be able to make an investment and feel responsible for somebody else's salary. So I know it can go a lot faster for some. For us, it took a little while because that nagging text didn't work all the time. But yeah, we decided we again didn't have that much money and didn't really know who we were going to hire. We knew who we were. We were business people who had done PowerPoint and Excel, and we knew that Bubble was this tool that enabled people without a tech background to do this thing. And so we thought, okay, we should look for more people who were like us. And I think at the time, we really thought about it as we wanted to hire generalists who could do everything up and down, and kind of collapse the normal sort of development team. And so we looked for people who were coming from banking and consulting and wanted to make a career transition and get into the tech world. And in the early stages, we set up a thing called a fellowship, which sounds very glamorous. It was free. We didn't pay anybody. But it was a 3-month period where our offer was, we will teach you how to build full stack applications using Bubble, and we'll kind of test you out, and then maybe we'll be in a position to make you an offer after that. I do think that was the start of a theme that we've continued with, which is try before you buy, and make people show you, not tell you what they can do. So that was kind of the start of that, and it was very helpful in that way. What we realized through that, and we found great people, and actually one of them, Steph, is still on our team today from that very initial stages, and an amazing designer, but she was excellent designer. We had somebody else excellent on the the back end, but loved this sort of weird green chartreuse color for all of his designs. And so we had very different skill sets on the team. So that kind of led us to think, okay, we need to think about how do we standardize and specialize as a team. So that was an immediate learning going outside of the two of us to say, okay, how do we actually want to create roles on our teams and also build some tooling for ourselves to help maintain that consistent quality that the two of us had kind of gotten used to just knowing each other. But yeah, those first few hires were really helpful for discovery, and I'm glad we didn't go much faster after that. We kind of took our time to digest working with others on our team and managing others and making that work.
Yeah. I say it's a cautionary tale on the Barrel side of like how we did the hiring, because it was very much in the early days budget constrained on salaries we could pay if at all, right? And then but also just not knowing what to hire first. So we ended up hiring a lot of designers first because that was we let the work dictate what we need to hire. So we're like, oh, we have a ton of design work, okay, hire designers. Oh, we have a ton of dev work, okay, hire developers. And so we just kind of let that go in that direction. And if we were to think about it more strategically, we probably should have done project management first because we still owned all the project management functions, and it just at the end of the day, in some ways, the person kind of communicating with the client, setting those expectations is, super important to kind of making sure, the project's organized, planned out, and thought through, and then the resources could come in and do the actual work. So took those learnings with BX, our Webflow agency. Just one of the things that we did early on was, okay, first hire's got to be a PM, second hire's probably got to be a PM. And by the way, and this was different because Barrel started in a different era where the idea of freelancers was a lot more not as proven out, or people are afraid to engage with freelancers. But nowadays, that's almost like the norm. You can hire really great contractors, freelancers, for multiple projects, and as you could almost treat them like an employee, but obviously being in compliance and kind of following the rules there, but so you can end up having a team now where you have a very small core of, let's say, project managers and other client-facing roles, and then everyone else, you could get different talent from elsewhere that are on a per project basis, and then have a very flexible workforce. Of course, one of the important things to consider is make sure there's onboarding and resources to ensure the quality of work is consistent across everything. But as long as you build that stuff out, you can have this kind of workforce that could scale up and down as needed. And I think that's a huge benefit now versus, I just remember we had to hire, and then you have a bad couple months of business development, and you're just paying these salaries, and you're like, oh, I don't want to fire them because they're full-time salaries, and you feel guilty about it, and that's not a good way to run a business because at the end you're holding the bag on this.
Yeah, awesome. Last question before we hop into Q&A. There are a lot of opinions out there about the perceived threat of AI to developer and agency business models. What's your current thinking on AI's impact in the development field, both positive and potentially negative? Peter, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm very much very bullish on AI for a number of reasons. I think it's immediately it's helping agencies just be more efficient and kind of help us focus on more high value work. I think as long as people are buying from people still, so it's not like AI agents buying from AI agents and we're completely disintermediated from that. There's still the element of the client service aspect, the hospitality aspect of the businesses that we run, because a lot of it is hey, even if you have AI assisted ideas and work product, there's still that emotional connection. There's still hey, let us collaborate and come together on an understanding and strategy. So I feel as long as the agency business, you're able to kind of provide that level of connection and service with clients. I don't see AI as a threat, more as a tool to help us do that better, and then also to eliminate a lot of the things that is frankly more kind of lower level tasks that we don't really need to use manpower on.
Yeah, I think AI is just a flash in the pan. It's going to be gone in a week or two. I agree with a lot of that. I think one thing that's been exciting is that there have been other waves of what is the tech trend of the hour, and we've gone through drones, and we've gone through crypto, and we've gone through a number of other phases. AI is really useful when combined with Bubble, as we all know as bubblers, and it's been really exciting now to build lots of AI powered applications and help other entrepreneurs or businesses figure out how to leverage AI. So that's been really great. I agree with Peter in terms of it is a threat as well. I mean, obviously, long term, it's a threat to humanity or whatever people are talking about there. We can kind of put that in a box for now. But yeah, it's a threat to different elements. But I think we try to take it in practical steps for ourselves and say, how can we take advantage of the tools that are in front of us, and how do we leverage those tools to make us better, to make us more efficient. I think the key is, it's very tempting as an agency to say, oh, I'm just going to put clients in front of a chatbot, and then I don't have to do any work. And I think, to Peter's point, that human touch is what people are looking for. And at least at this point, those conversations, and it goes back to your other point about, product management and project management and account management. Those soft skills within an agency are absolutely critical. It's not just about, amassing a team of developers who can just go off and be worker bees. Like, you really need to understand what your clients need, and so that's been a key for us. I think that will continue to be a key.
Thank you both. We have a few minutes left here, so we're going to go into some Q&A from chat. So from Devin, they would like to know, how did you find your project managers that you've spoken so highly about during this panel?
Yeah, I mean, these days we put up job posts and we go through a lot, and just a lot of candidates. I think the vetting process is important. I mean, the best PMs, we always like to test, because it's hard to find through an interview process how they react under pressure, how they organize kind of volumes of emails and communication streams and stuff. So we like to engage. If somebody kind of checks out on the interview process, we go, okay, cool. Let's do a test project, and we'll put them on, and then right away you get to kind of evaluate them for, okay, they're organized, they're clear in communication. They're very good at communicating with clients, and so those things kind of play out. So I think you just have to go through a lot of candidates, and if they're not good, you just have to move on quickly, because I think one of the things that erodes kind of relationships is when you have a poorly performing project manager and stick around for too long.
We started by pulling product managers out of our Bubble developer pool. It was people who already knew Bubble and who also had those other skills and interests of working more closely with clients on the product side and kind of defining things. And I think that was very helpful in the early stages, and it continues to be very beneficial, in our opinion, in our model, to have product managers who know Bubble very well. Because in addition to needing to know what the client wants and needing to know how to think about what we should build, you need to be able to imagine yourself building that using Bubble. And that's what we tell our product managers is, don't write a scope, don't write features down unless you know how you would build it and you know that you can build it. The alternative will get you into a lot of trouble, kind of waving your hands. And so that was good for a while. We did find that sometimes you can't pull enough developers from your pool, and also sometimes those are your best developers and you want to keep them working on what they're really great at. And so we eventually shifted to a mode where we would pull in product managers directly. Like Peter said, I mean, it's a show don't tell, especially with product managers. It's a role that means a lot of different things at a lot of different organizations. And so people will say, oh yeah, 10 years in product, 15 years in product, and it looks good, and they've worked at good companies. But we have a very specific process that we like to follow and standards that we like to meet. And we found that we made some poor decisions early on, just kind of assuming that everyone would work in the way that we did. And so we put people through a lot of hands-on exercises at various stages of our selection process to have them actually show how they think about products and select that way. And then we still today, and it's a bit of a cumbersome burden that we put on ourselves, but when we select a new product manager, we have them go through our Bubble bootcamp and learn Bubble and make sure that they can actually build stuff before they start then going through our PM onboarding and getting to the point where they can work with clients in that respect, because again, it's just, we find it's very critical. So I would say last thing is it's actually a pretty good market to hire PMs right now, at least. There's a lot of resumes that come in when you put something out there. And so it's a good time to just really make sure you focus on quality, over quantity, and don't be too excited about the first person who walks in the door. Like, find somebody who you think is going to be a fit, because as Peter said, I mean, that was a huge learning for us early on. We had this fellowship with a few developers and we were going that route, but we found that the product manager role is so critical to, providing that liaison between client and what developer is doing, and that's where projects go on or off track, and so it's a critical thing to think about.
Great. So we have time for one more question before we close out. We're going to take the question from Mike. When do you think it's more useful to position yourself as a Bubble agency or Shopify agency instead of focusing on a more generic value prop?
Positioning, yeah.
Peter, you want to take this one to start?
Yeah, sure. Positioning is a fascinating topic. You could go really deep into this, but ultimately, it's you got to take a step back and be like, okay, just when you're trying to land a client or stand out. First of all, when you're trying to attract opportunities, how do you want to differentiate, or just be in a position so that when somebody comes across you, they're like, there's something about it that stands out. And a lot of times the generic route works when you actually have big brands and you work with some really recognizable clients, and so for some of those agencies, you could kind of lead with that, and that is your differentiator. Oh yeah, we did all kinds of work for Nike, we did all kinds of work for Coca-Cola, whatever, and that could be the lead. But if you don't have that, then it helps to have some other kind of differentiation. And yeah, platforms are one form. You could also go by vertical. You could combine the two of them as well. So you could be, fintech, Bubble for fintech companies. In the case of our Shopify agency, we're becoming CPG commerce, with the Shopify focus. So there's a lot you can do there. And I think it's one thing you have to remember is that there's a couple aspects to it. You could position yourself broadly to the general public, how you might kind of put on your homepage. But then there's also the way you position yourself in individual conversations. So you might be like, okay, when I'm talking to a food, let's say a food brand that wants to do some kind of e-com with us, we might say, oh, these are the clients that we work with, and these are all the things that we know about food. And by the way, we specialize in food. That's what they want to hear. But also it's a more compelling argument because you're not going to bring out all these irrelevant case studies and examples in that conversation. So just think about positioning as it could be very flexible on an individual level, and then you can pick and choose on how you want to present it in the public level. But then it's just a great topic to continue to refine on and continue to revisit as you have more clients and kind of analyze which ones you do best with.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's looked at our website over the year, which has changed a whole lot, we have gone back and forth and repositioned ourselves a whole lot of times. In the early days, we didn't want to say Bubble. We didn't want no code wasn't a thing. It was all about the value we're delivering. We will build this thing, 5x faster. Let us show you how, and we'll get to Bubble a little bit later. Then no code happened in a big way, and now no code can be used as an asset. Like I was describing before, it can be great for getting the intro and some SEO, and then you have to kind of make this pivot with Bubble about Bubble's different than other no-code tools, lest you trap yourself into perceptions about general no-code tools. So we've kind of done the lean into Bubble, lean into no-code generally, also the general thing. I mean, I think it comes back to, this is a pretty basic point, but thinking about where you expect to get your leads from, or where you hope to get your leads from. Who are those people? Where are they coming from? What do they already know and not know or care about? And how do you want to message to them, right? So, if you are trying to get leads from within the Bubble ecosystem, yeah, we're Bubble. We're all in on Bubble. We're the best on Bubble. We're the newest. We're the sleekest. We do things in a different way. When you're going, outside, you can kind of pick your poison about our differentiator is Bubble and no code. Or you can kind of do the hey, we are this magic that that delivers the end product faster, better, cheaper, let us show you how. So we've kind of done different variants on that messaging, but I think you just need to know, who you, in theory, are talking to and what they care about.
Awesome. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Andrew and Peter, for being a part of this panel. If folks want to know more about your agencies or get in touch with you after the session, what are the best ways for them to reach you? Andrew?
Yeah, you can. Most of our info is on our site, airdev.co. If you're a bubbler and you want to check out our resources like our Canvas framework, our bootcamp, our wiki, you can go to build.bubble.co. And then, you can send me an email. I'm Andrew at airdev.co. Did I say .bubble.co? I did. That's to keep you all honest. It's airdev.co.
Yeah.
Nice.
And Peter?
Yeah, I post a lot on LinkedIn, so follow me LinkedIn there. Look up Peter Kang. 34 is my handle, and then also, I just launched so I have this site called Agency Docs, which we rebranded, launching as agencyhabits.com, and it's basically just a resource, like putting a lot of the takeaways from running our agencies. We're putting it as articles and different resources on that site, so check that out. And then of course, barrel-holdings.com is where you can find all the information about our agencies.
Awesome. Let's give it up for our panelists.